Greetings, all. We have a super special episode today, and I will give a disclaimer talking to Daniel Levinson, who not only is, well, I'll get him to, tell more about himself, but he is like a fight choreographer, fight instructor. He's internationally known as the oldest, I think, fight company ever, Rapier Wit here in Canada. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And you're all over the place and you do so many creative things. But my disclaimer is you're also my cousin. But I just say it doesn't matter. You're a super creative person. And I think people will really learn a lot from talking with you and I, about all the things you got into. I mean, and again, I know right from the early on, my earliest memories of you in Ottawa, we were reading a spectacular Spider-Man 2 reprint, watching the Green Goblin fight Spider-Man. That's my early memory. And we've always been into comic books and all sorts of films and action things. And it's so exciting to see you go down this route. So I thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. And
A
so,
great pleasure. So yeah, to just to sort of bookend what you were talking about. So Rapier Wit's my company, and just in case some people are freaked out by the name because they don't know how to spell it, because occasionally people hear it incorrectly. So it's Rapier Wit, right? Um,
okay.
so it's Canada's oldest stage combat school and production company. And when I got out of university in 1991, I didn't want to wait for the phone to ring, and I started the company, but it was super small and extremely college, right? Like I was borrowing spaces and going where I could to do work, and I thought I was going to do some writing and do some improv and do some acting and and some fighting. And as time progressed, for various reasons, people liked uh, what I did, the stories I told through the physical actions of the illusion of violence, and how I made them feel empowered in character and story and safety, because our rules in stage combat are super easy: safety, story, and then style. And we'll go more back into that if you want in a sec. And so I decided to really take the risk in 1996 and actually got what I'm going to laughably call my first studio, which was I lived in it and I worked in it, and it was the size of a postage stamp, and you had to go outside to change your mind kind of joke, right? But it got me moving in a space that was intended to be an open space for work. And over the years, I ended up I kept growing with a newer space, and then uh, I married my wife Kirsten, and with with absolutely her help, we moved, I think, to a much more professional level, and physically moved in 2003 to where I am now, Bathurst and King in Toronto, so right downtown, into a space that allows a lot more work and a large open space, no pillars. Like it was really an incredible find. And we lived above the studio, and now that's our office, green space, meeting space, and it really allows. I'd like to say the arts community, larger than just Rapier Wit or the association I'm part of, Fight Directors Canada, but the larger groups, people have been using it. Now, sadly, for a year, we've been in major renovations. We had been kicking the can down the road, and it was time. And every surface has been altered and fixed. And so that's been emotionally incredibly challenging. So I've been working in rental spaces, going to other companies because, of course, I get hired to do things, but to not have the base, the home, the location that draws people in and gave us a meeting space was really challenging after having it for so long. And and I think you'll understand if I say my sense of identity, this probably isn't as healthy as it could be, but my sense of identity was so wrapped up in what I am and the work I do and the ability to mentor and develop art that this took a huge hit. And so we kind of feel it's not entirely true, but it kind of felt like we never really got back to where we were before COVID. That being said, we're getting near the end of the renos, and we are reopening, and it's going to be spectacular. So the positivity is starting to grow again. But being an artist and a Jewish artist, I awfulize. And what if I open and no one comes back? Kind of feeling. It's
Mhm.
irrational and it's not true, but it's that silly sense that I think all of us have in the back of our minds as artists. That the little guy on your shoulder who tells you that you're not doing the right thing, you're not, you're a fraud, all that negativity that you think you outgrew, and it's still there.
Wow. So, and there's many ways we can go, right? From the fact of like having a physical space and how that can make one creative, the illusion of violence, which started making me think about magic and the whole
Oh
other
yeah, please. Yeah.
theatrical arts, the concept of your background too, as you said, you were doing improv. There's a whole bunch of other forms probably that led into why you're able to do what this to do. But also, again, the whole artistic thing is what is the artist versus a non-artist? Everyone has that voice. The artist just pushes through and creates something anyways and be damned with it, and just shares it with the world. So there's lots of things you just flipped out there that I think we can talk about. But maybe we could start too, just going back, like maybe right from the beginning and like the journey a little bit more about how you got to this. Because you said you were trying many things. Like it
Yeah,
sounded like from the beginning you didn't want to be an accountant. I don't know, like
you
from
know,
childhood, it was more like
I I will fully admit I'm very dyslexic. So math and I are not dear friends. And so accountancy was
yeah.
not going to be a good thing. And the other joke about what's the joke about what do you call the Jewish kid who faints at the sight of blood? The lawyer? That kind of,
Sorry, pardon
but
me. You tell jokes like
but
I do. We
yeah,
apologize to the audience, but okay,
yeah,
okay.
that's right. You know what? It's like it, they came for the wit.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I always felt a desire to create.
Hmm.
And and I tried my hand at different things. Like when I was in high school, I had a phenomenal art teacher, Mrs. Adams, for visual art, like painting. And
Hmm.
my frustration was that my fine motor skills, ironic now that I do the illusion of violence, but my fine motor skills, I didn't have, I never reached the place either through impatience or or focus, I guess, to find the ability to move from my artistic mind and desire to the product completion. Now, I should take a step back and talk about product. We spend, meaning Rapier Wit and Fight Collectors Canada, so much of our time on process. And product, we're trying hard in the area of education, learning, growth, and training. Product is the signpost of where you are at a certain moment versus the goal. Oh no. Well, let's ignore that because this is much more important. Well, just
Oh,
one sec.
okay.
I have a feeling that's not something I want to answer anyway.
Okay.
So, what I was talking about was process.
Do you need it?
The
We
thing
I can
about
always cut this
process,
out. So, and I will
yeah,
cut
no,
some of this
exactly.
out. Okay.
So the thing about process is um, it's so enjoyable to be in process. And we have to, at some point, find our way, flip to product, meaning that at some point we're probably going to perform what we're doing, be it a live performance or recorded medium, the idea of capturing it for motion capture or whatever that art is, because we're in a physical medium versus the painting or the writing medium. And the thing about it is, at some point, we decide this is where it is. And so for me, the product's useful to give you an idea where you are and to give you a point of sharing. Because if you stay in process all the time, you you're safe because you never share it, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm. Yeah. It's the
But
pursuit for perfection that
which is
never
unpublished.
can be attained.
Yeah. The other side of it, though, is pure product focus only, only, only focus frequently forces the hand to go to a place of immediate problem solving, sometimes complacency. Like you know a
Mhm.
solution, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. So, for instance, when I did improv, and I did a lot of it when I was younger, I really enjoyed it. But after a while, when it was a performative improv as opposed to training improv, you got good at tricks, especially with your peers you worked with a lot. So improv kind of became set pieces for performance ability because you knew you'd get the laugh and you knew that the audience would have a good time, which was they were paying money to be
Mhm.
entertained. And this isn't to insult people who do this because it's a relationship. It's an agreement that these people have come to enjoy themselves. The belief that they want to watch something spontaneous develop and be created in front of them. But at the same time, nobody really wants to watch the sausage being made. And from my experience in improv, I can promise you for every knockout of the park, if you're really taking risks, you have like 100 disasters. And the disasters we often do in training, and that's what it's for, right? Um, Going back to what I do in the stage combat aspect of it, my goal superficially is simple. I want to create a physical act that you witness that causes an emotional event inside of you. Now, superficially, that's simple. You can imagine the challenge behind that because it could mean that I want to get you to laugh, emotional event, or a sense of horror for the character, or sadness at the defeat and the death of the character, you know? And at the same time, I never want you to worry about the actor. And it's an interesting relationship. So you could watch a profoundly violent, aggressive event that ends in death and go home comfortable because you understand it's happening to the character, not the actor. But if we do it in a way that confuses the audience or makes them fear for the actor's health and safety, that we've broken our contract and they can no longer watch us and be audience. Years ago, I was just an audience member, so I was not the creator. I wasn't the performer. I was just an audience member, and I saw an actor badly hurt on stage. And I can promise you, after that event, basically struck in the head, and we saw blood flow. And you knew by the nature of the show, this wasn't a show that was going to have blood effects. This wasn't a show that was going to have that kind of technology. Like this actor got hit in the head and was bleeding. And no one in that house, in the audience, was able to sustain themselves as audience anymore. We were all profoundly worried about this actor. And on top of it, it was basically, to all intents and purposes, semi or non-professional theater. So most of the people were family or friends of this person who got hurt, and it's a very important thing. So that's why, going back to what I said at the top, the safety story style. First rule is safety, and that safety is both the physical safety of the performers and the emotional safety of the audience, which is an interesting thing that people may not think about. You
I'm just
love
going to
films.
jump in for a second just
Please.
to kind of connect it to. We have a common friend, Mark Huseman, I believe, who used to be with you. And he was a simulated patient because I used to do tons of simulation. So I did a lot
Wow,
like you
years
did,
ago.
but only for mental health and there's sometimes we did violence too, but in a controlled way, which is an interesting thing. But it was always psychological safety and the kind of framework about here's the outside world, here's the briefing, debriefing. Now we're going into the sim, and you have to make the demarcations because people can get lost along the way, and it destroys everything when you do get lost. Mark once told a story about, I think, he had two friends who were doing fighting out in public. So they got arrested, but they were doing fighting training. But they didn't think about what the impact was for people watching them do the fighting training in the wrong context. And so they got arrested for walking around with swords and fighting in a park. And so, to your point, the whole psychological and physical and emotional is super important for doing this. Just like magicians and comedians, you do the wrong thing, you can insult someone the wrong way, it blows the whole framework. So I just wanted to throw that in about everything you're saying relates across many art forms, it seems.
Absolutely brilliant. Like it is, yes, it's 100%. And what we are paid to do in a very real way as performers is to to perform the illusion of these physical and emotional risks for the emotional journey of the audience. So think for a moment, perhaps the last, I'm going to use film just because so many people watch film,
Mm-hmm.
where you felt a profound sadness at the death of a character that you knew that the actor wasn't dead because you saw them being interviewed, like you
Yeah.
know, and there's this. It's a gift like Hamlet talks about watching an actor do a soliloquy, and he mentions he didn't cry. Hamlet didn't cry when his father died, but he cried when this actor performs these words. So we have, uh, and this might be a bit um, overspoken, but we have a responsibility in what we do in this, and an important one. And of course, theater is ancient, right? Like back to the ancient Greeks and its religion, right? It was part and parcel of the entire cultural society and the need to have these emotional events, right? And so you can see that I've been thinking about this a lot, and
Yes.
and I think right now in this day and age, there's a lot of unrest, unease, emotional distress on the social level, and it we could talk about the internet and how algorithms are made to take advantage of our states and push us in directions. Whereas I think the desire for this relationship is still important to humans. And I'm hoping that we will see a continuation with live performance, meaning theater, music, sports, right? There's something different about being in the room and not having the frame or the barrier of technology or the editing. And it was interesting because you said about comedy, stand-up comedy, let's say, or improv for that matter. There's risk. Like you said, the joke could not land. And so one of the things we teach our peers is as a performer, when a mistake is made, and I'm not talking about an injury, like not like someone stabbed someone, I'm talking about you flubbed a line or you didn't do the technique exactly the way you wanted to, or you perhaps have for a moment forgotten a part of the fight. One of the things a very wise friend of mine, his name is Ian Rose, and he's a fight master in the US. Um, and he basically talks about forgive yourself immediately so that you continue with your relationship with your audience. And the audience isn't stupid. They frequently know when things go south, but they forgive you when you care for them and continue the event and story. And it's forgotten because they're moving on to the next event.
Well, yeah, and that's a lot of what many people say. It's that relationship you build, building the trust, and that's again simulation fight and all that. It's like you got to have trust, and once that's busted, it's really hard to get it back.
And you were talking about magic, and we
Mhm.
often talk about magic too, this idea of sleight of hand,
Mhm.
controlling the audience's attention and expectation so that the outcome you are seeking, the ball magically appears, or for us, it looks like the character got stabbed through the throat, you know, um, is understood and believed, right? What breaks my heart, I think, as an audience, are people who either, as performers, don't believe in the audience. Like they think the audience is stupid or has no taste. And therefore, there's a combativeness with the audience, and they, you know, and again, this is again maybe speaking, yeah, you know, but there has to be love in what you do, and you have to have love for the performance of it.
Mhm.
Um, and the second thing that breaks my heart is the belief that anything will do. So
You're talking about streaming content. We were talking about content in process, and I think we're swimming in content that
yeah,
just coming out, and that's back to the AI too, and everything else, and who knows where it's all coming from. But I think you're talking about that, and it's like sludge drill,
that's a
and go
fantastic word, sludge.
to
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
dumbest denominator.
And
Versus in the again, if you respect your audience, they respect you. If you don't respect them, they don't respect you.
so I'm going to sound like a total snob, and I'm not going to name the show, as some
Okay.
people may love it. But there's a universe I really, really love and grew up with and loved. And
No.
there's been some, pardon? Oh, did you do this?
Was it
And
that by any chance? I don't know why.
no, but
No, not that universe. Oh,
and I was a
maybe
bit
it's
heartbroken. No, 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 because I'm
oh,
afraid. No, 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 no,
yeah,
no, no, no.
we
You
won't
don't
say
listen to
what.
what I
Okay.
But I'm gonna say you're totally in the right ball, right? Um,
Hmm.
and I truly, it's not again that I was unaware, like the original series, because you talked about Star Trek, so let's take that for a second. Like things was held together with duct tape and hope. Like
Yeah.
if you'd been on the set, it was like hot glue and sparkles. Like you knew that you know. But they it was lightning in a bottle, and they managed, you know. And then when
Mhm.
Next Gen came out, they put a lot of money into it, obviously, and you know. But it was always about the stories,
Yeah.
and it was always about people, the characters, right? And I was trying to really enjoy some of the newer ones, and it was like there was sludge. There was all like, what are you doing? And and I was heartbroken because I couldn't enjoy it. Like I'm willing to put up with a ton, to be quite honest. And I watch old movies that are like rubber monsters that are like ridiculous, and you know.
Me
But
too. Ray Harryhausen, Godzilla, but it's because they do it in a way, and I think we can talk about this too.
please,
And this is for magic as well. The suspension of disbelief. And it's like, that's fine. I know it's a stop animation skeleton, but that's
yeah.
okay. I bought into it. Now I'm enjoying myself. Versus now they try to make it almost too realistic and in a way that it's not trying to engage people, that it blows the connection, if that makes any sense.
Or or if I may,
Mm-hmm.
um, the Harryhausen was about, and I'm going to use the skeleton because it's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's ridiculous, but we weren't sure our hero was going to survive, right? And these skeletons, and he's on the stone upright, and he's trying to fight these skeletons down, and
Yeah.
you know, and like you said,
Oh, for
it
the
was
audience, and I'll put it in Jason and the Argonauts, I think we're referencing with the two
yeah,
red shirts before we had red shirts.
yeah. But now they can do hyperreal with some very good digital materials.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you have characters talking about things. You're being attacked by skeletons. Let's deal with the skeletons and not discuss about our emotions at this moment.
I know what you mean.
So clearly, just by this conversation we're having, we are passionate and emotional people. I'm just saying, right? Like I'm not going to pretend that these emotions don't exist. Okay, screw it. I'm going to talk about Star Trek. Look what you've done,
Oh,
you know.
I was
But
right the whole time. I don't know.
you were right the whole time. No,
It's
but
one of
here's the
my
thing,
favorite
and I do
shows
love Star
from.
Trek, and don't, and I like a lot of the new stuff too. By the way, it's not like I hate everything because like there's
Mhm.
that fan that it's like I don't like anything that existed now that I'm older than
Yeah.
30. Not that guy. But my thinking, I had this conversation with Kirsten about this. That so Starfleet, the school, you're probably the elite to get in there. That's like going to the best of the best, get into that school. And then the people who graduate out and are put on starships probably are the best of the school. And the people who go on to the flagship are the best of the best. Do I feel these people don't have emotions? Of course not. But the ship's on fire, falling towards a black hole, and they're fighting off an alien battle. Okay. I think you should put the fire out, save yourself from the black hole, and defeat the enemy before discussing your emotional stakes at this moment. What I liked about the old series is the denouement. They talked about things.
Yeah, yeah. At the end,
So
when they're doing a
they were
debrief.
yeah.
Yeah.
And and I know some people who they're the real deal. So they do actual violence because of their jobs. And they don't say they're not afraid. They don't say they're not angry. It's just they've trained and they're doing what has to be done. And then it's after they debrief and talk to their peers, you know?
Because Starfleet is still a military force, by the way, not a.
But you know what? But I'll take that away from you. Go to medicine.
Okay.
And the
Well,
reason why
no,
I say
but
that, think about
it's a paramilitary, just like EMS. We have like, yeah. But
yeah.
what I'm just
No,
saying
but
is,
the reason why I
when
say
it
that
comes to
is
saving lives and dealing with protecting the universe or whatever from the Borg and being assimilated, you got to do what you got to do. They're ready to. We're going to blow up this ship and run him. We'll talk about. No, it's, I feel sad now. No, everyone's just ready to do it because they've been trained. Back to simulation. You'd have to assume all these people have been simulated and simulated. I always remember Aliens 2, Aliens, where the guy had his 39, and I don't know how many simulated drops, only a second drop, but everyone else has been trained. So they're ready to do it. And they're not talking about their emotions. And the only time I've ever seen a good talking back and forth, besides comic books like Spider-Man. So I did do a little research. I was just thinking about what's my favorite fight scenes to go back into what you were talking about. And my other thought too about movies, why I like movies when we used to sit in an audience so everyone have the emotions together. And my fear that one of my favorite fight scenes from childhood, and I'm worried for this franchise because Amazon just bought it. So I'm praying to God it doesn't go. You might know what it is. It's James Bond. My favorite James Bond fight of all time might not be what people expect, but it's from Russia with Love, the train scene. And
oh,
and this is what I was going to ask you too. I mean, I have the Mark of Zorro from 1940, which with Tyrone Power,
it's a
Russia with Love,
spectacular
and the
fight.
John Wick
And
Chapter 2 sequence where he fights three assassins and then fights Cassian. And the reason I was going to ask you about this was, to me, it all seemed the only way you can make those fight choreographies is there's this whole front story, a whole
yes,
build up to it.
yep.
It's not just the fight, as you were saying, there's emotion to it. So there's got to be acting, story, payoffs, callbacks. But I'm really worried, like what I've seen already with James Bond kind of going its way. But the reason I was raising this to you is back to what you were saying. It's like James Bond is not going to talk about his emotions in the middle of a fight. He'll make a witty line after he kills his opponent because that's part of the formula. But anyway, I was just going to throw that to you about these
Yeah.
types of things.
Can I throw another movie that we're talking about? Because John Wick has some fantastic stuff in it.
I know.
Uh, what about Nobody?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, the recent one with Better Call
That
Saul,
bus
right?
fight
Yeah. Okay.
is astounding. That
Yeah.
bus fight is astounding because there's comedy in it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, go see it because it's amazing. And the second one's coming out, so you should see the
Yeah.
first one. But he gets thrown out the window, lands on the street, gets up, dragging his sorry ass past the bus driver who he has pushed outside the bus so she wouldn't get hurt, and gets back onto the bus, and everyone's like, it was amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to throw like sword movies, the Three and Four Musketeers, uh, with Oliver Reed and Cyrano. Sorry, Scaramouche.
Oh
Cyrano's.
yes.
I have to be. I'm going to be doing a Cyrano in the new year, but
But Cyrano was good
Scaramouche.
too. And
Yeah,
Scaramouche.
but
And again, these are the old films I try to get my kids to watch.
and there was an endurance,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was what I mean by that is there was when I say endurance, it's you watched the characters struggle to win, right? And they had to do different things. It wasn't repetitive, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like
Right.
new
It's a
new
buildup
techniques.
of
Yeah.
so there's a payoff at the end. So I will say the what I consider what they call the New Hope, which I just call Star Wars, and the Empire Strikes Back in that series, like Luke Skywalker's original journey too.
Huge growth. Yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't just
And this
take
is
on
going to
Darth
sound
Vader
like,
the first movie or the second movie.
well, like the reason why
We are.
the newer Star Wars movies didn't land for us in the same way is there didn't seem to be growth or struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I mean, it's spoken about all the time. The hero's journey really is important, you know. And the problem is that once it was shared in such a term, the hero's journey, then all of a sudden it became a trope and people make fun of it. But I mean, some people really get it,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, there's something about animation. When animation's done well, because it is so created away from looking at a human moving, there's some freedom in it. So Kirsten's a writer, and there was a fantastic writer event she went to where the person who created How to Train Your Dragon, the original movie, talked about the experience of going from an unusable product to this successful film. And there was a period where they were out of money and they still had so much to do and they had to rethink a lot of things. And if you watch the original movie, there's great growth, you know, great story and character growth. And I think the problem is when it works really well and it's invisible, and rightly so, we expect it.
Yep.
And and unfortunately, it's like health, being healthy, you take it for granted. And when you're sick, you know, this is the new me. Am I always going to walk with this limp? Am I,
Yeah.
you know, am I going to have this stuffed up nose the rest of my life? You know? And so I think sometimes being our age and after seeing as much art, consuming as much film and television, books and comics, that we're starting to get frustrated and sad by what we talked about earlier about anything
Mm-hmm.
we'll do. So you have 5 minutes to get this stuff out, get this dreck out, out we go. You know, I have all these really neat old sci-fi books, uh, and these writers, novellas and short stories. These writers on a Tuesday wrote a science fiction story, and then on a Wednesday did a detective story,
Mm-hmm.
and on a Thursday did a western. These were masterful writers whose names are known to people who are geeks and into the world, but otherwise are unknown. And
Mm-hmm.
they're incredible craftsmen because of what they did. And you might point to them and go, well, they just wrote and said, no, no, because you always hear the same stories about after they passed away, there's a huge trunk of unpublished books and unpublished works that to us are really good. To them, they weren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Or more importantly, were not published. The publisher didn't think they were good enough, you know, and so there was there was some gatekeeping, which I know is a negative term now, but there was some gatekeeping because there was only so many spaces, places for these stories to appear. And so these writers were competing and it had to be good stuff.
And I guess speaking of balance of like gatekeeping too, so I'll go really way back. But did you
Please.
ever read Dangerous Visions with Harlan Ellison? Maybe not. This is the year I was
I
born,
certainly know Harlan
1967.
Ellison. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the new wave of science fiction. And it's like, because a lot of people wouldn't publish certain things that had to do with too much violence or sex or weird topics. But they were still, he went to all the top writers and it's all super excellent writers. But now they were allowed to publish in this book and it kind of allowed people to talk about stuff people weren't talking about before. But to your point, they were craftsmen, artists. They were good. They weren't writing dreck.
And going back about the Wit being closed for this year,
Mhm.
I feel the loss of the craftsman aspect. We would meet weekly and do things. We had Monday drop-ins. Speaking personally, I was constantly being asked to be in the room, in the moment, in the now, and being creative. And I have to tell you, it really, it's like all of a sudden stop working out
Yeah.
and feeling the muscle loss. These are fragile skills that I'm talking about. And another joke that I always think about is, as artists go, musicians play their instrument every day, do their scales, practice, practice, practice. Dancers are constantly in class, constantly working their instrument. Writers write, even if they throw the paper into the waste paper basket, and painters paint. But only actors spend a year waitering and then think they're ready to play Hamlet. Yeah.
Good point.
And
And
so
it
the
does
idea
speak
was to
to,
create
I
this
just,
place. I wanted this place to keep our skills up.
it's an interesting, I'll just do a funny analogy because I just reread, you might not know Roger Zelazny, or maybe you do, but he's an
Mhm.
old science fiction writer.
Yeah,
And I would
yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah, the Chronicles of Amber. But one of my favorite ones was Shadow Jack, or Jack of Shadows, sorry. It's the world is stuck, the sun's on one side and it's always facing night on the other. But there was this on the dark side, all the wizards, they had their places of power. And each one, when they're in their places of power, then they can do their work and they're most powerful. Because it's all about art. I think a lot of people talking metaphorically, but it's like, as you're saying, like, even like Ray Bradbury, he had to have his office, and I have a similar office you can't see, but I need to be in a space and be super stimulated with a bunch of stuff. And that's what he did. I said, I'll do that too. He said, like, the dancer's not just going to dance in the middle of nowhere. They usually maybe go to a studio. It's like you have your fight studio in that place of power or safety and familiarity. It's easier to create and to do stuff versus, again, when that analogy, well, that story about, oh, let's just go fight out in the park. Oops, we're arrested. Well, no good. So I could see what you're talking about. Even when I go on trips, I still like to do creative stuff, but I just don't feel as comfortable in my little cave, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were super lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Kirsten and I had this wonderful trip to Italy back in October. And of course, we went to see some of the great art that I'd studied for years. So I'd never been to Florence before. We went to Florence and we went to Venice. And so I got to be in the room to see the stuff that, like the David, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is transformative to be in the space, to be face to face with something versus just a reproduced image of it. And you're talking about stimulus. Overstimulus is something too, meaning there's some rooms I was in where I couldn't see all the art
Mm-hmm.
because it was like wall to ceiling paintings. It's like, where are we going to put this trash? Just put it up against, you know what I mean? Because they had so much
Yeah.
art,
Yeah.
right? And there was a phenomenal armory where this person, his father, like, was in control of the East Indian Company, and so his son had unlimited resources to all intents and purposes, and created the greatest armory outside of government armory. And of course, the name is on tip of my tongue. I'll think of it. But anyway, I'm walking through and I'm like, I have never experienced so much to look at. And Kirsten was watching me geek out with our
Mm-hmm.
friend Lloyd, because it was Lloyd's idea to go to it, and Lloyd Caldwell, and we were totally like little children running and pointing at these swords and spears and shields and armor and things that I know all about, but I've never seen, you know, well, and in person, and it was almost an embarrassment of riches, right? And I can promise you, I missed a ton of stuff because you couldn't see it. It was too much,
Mm-hmm.
right? And isn't that a gift to have that much to experience?
Well, I want to ask you something too. and I don't get any money from Julie Cameron because I bring up this book I read 30 years ago, The Artist's Way. There's only two exercises I do for it. Oh yeah, the morning pages and the artist state. But the artist state, and this I bring it up, but what you're describing too, and I think you were alluding to it, it's like doing all this art, being on, giving out the art, being creative all the time, you'll burn out. And
Yeah.
part of that artist state is what you're describing, I think, is I'm getting out of my cave, I'm going somewhere else because I'm taking something in and I'm not putting anything out right now. I'm just absorbing. Because I was going to ask about your creative process, but it sounds like you know about her too. And like I tell everyone about
But,
that because
but
I
I'll
love
fully
mine.
admit, there have been some times when I've been feeling
Mm-hmm.
numb and like I I remember distinctly being younger and thinking I would never have a moment where I wouldn't have a creative idea.
When we were
And
young.
and now I've reached a point where that's not always the case. I'd like to think when push comes to shove and the job demands, I'm always there for it. But and again, not that I don't think I want to talk about the world right now, but um,
Mm-hmm.
it's intruding and it's costly and exhausting and it's nibbling at my resources, my spoons, you know. And so I'm feeling blown and tired. With the renovations, and honestly, I've really nothing to complain about because Kirsten is been the one on the design side who's taken the vast lion's share on the decision making. But I'm exhausted on the decision making, and it's like we're talking everything from tiles to pulls to like drawer pulls, and oh, you'll know his name. Who wrote Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And of course,
Okay,
I can't
so
remember his name either.
but it's cool. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
so this short story he shares. I think it's in that first book that always sits with me is this idea that you're taken away to a place and you're given a stick and you're to polish the stick and do nothing else. Like all your cares are taken care of, and all you do for this period of time is to perfect this perfect polished stick is the metaphor of working. And at the end of it, everyone tells you you've done the best job. But what comes after is but then all the minutia and bullshit that we drown in every day is taken care of for you.
Yeah.
And this idea, you you we didn't record about the AI, did we? When you and I were talking
No,
about AI,
well,
you
if
like
not,
AI
let's do it
doing
again.
yeah, no, but so what did you say to me about AI? Because I thought it was profound.
Well, I just mentioned I will always ask every guest but if
Mhm.
AI is influencing your art and ability to do the
Yeah.
art in positive or maybe not so positive ways, because I'm biased. I don't think it should take over the creative center, but should assist in some ways and not steal unethically other people's
Yes.
work.
I fully resist it. And it might be because I'm a bit of a Luddite, but, and this isn't technically AI, but I have really embraced trying to get things that I don't like paying your bills automatically.
Yeah.
Like like I would like to be free of that minutia that's garbage.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That
that
gets in the
just
way of being able
well,
to do your creative
yes.
processes. Yeah.
So Kirsten and I, it doesn't happen every day, but we have someone come in every few weeks to do a good cleaning of the apartment because it's back saving and quite frankly, like we aren't dirty people, but it's that extra thing, right? Um, a therapist I know talked about hiring someone to do their laundry, and it was
Mm-hmm.
freeing because they loathed it was this one thing, the laundry thing, you know? And this realization that AI hasn't lived up to that we were hoping for is like originally when we think about robots back when we were younger, it was like dirty, dangerous, and dark was what the robots were supposed to take care of.
Like in the Jetsons.
And
Yeah.
so I love the idea of AI keeping track of your health. You still go see a human, but it's But it's like,
It's just collecting data for your
yeah,
use. Your use, by the way, not the
yes,
corporations, hopefully. But yeah.
yes, exactly. Or it's. I'm trying to think of a better example, but it's something that's important that we're as an organic machine not good at doing, and does it for us,
Mhm.
right? And the thing, again, because we both love science fiction so much, the trope of humanity almost coming to extinction because of artificial intelligence. And and so right now there are two series that have been created from very old books. One is Foundation, and the other one um, is Foundation. What's the other one? Dune. And I find that interesting that both of those universes are artificial intelligence free.
Yep.
Humanity, previous to when you start the stories, uh, fought some kind of uh, uh, absolute war, practically to extinction. And now humans have been altered to do the work that we are using computers for in the Dune world, in the
Mhm.
um, Foundation. And I think that's super interesting. We were talking about Star Trek. Now, computers are everywhere, hidden
Oh,
within
and
the
we should
walls of
throw in the
buildings.
reimagining of Battlestar Galactica, not the last season.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of the newer one, just because I grew up with the old one, and it wasn't. I didn't have a hate on for it. I just was watching so many other things, and I don't know if you're anything like me, but once everyone's watching it and it's totally almost done,
Mainstream?
it's too late to go in. No, it's just like, oh, I don't have,
Oh, I see.
yeah. Like
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's like I did not have a hate on, but for whatever reason, it was one of those things I just never got to. Supernatural is another one. Like I have friends who so love
Mhm.
Supernatural, and it's not like I hated it. There reached a point where it's like after season 48, it's too late for me to get into. I'm sorry, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, just going back to Dangerous Visions 1967, and even before, everyone was always predicting all this AI stuff. But one of my favorite stories, I can't remember the writers, but the premise was AI was becoming so prominent, people just becoming less and less smart because they're not able to learn
Yes,
through adversity. And eventually become, they let them win like chess, they let them write. And so everyone just becomes more and more like babies. Eventually they're acting like babies and they can't look after themselves. So the AI starts putting them in cradles almost. And then eventually just put them in like the Matrix, not for batteries, just like, oh, we'll look after the humans because they put
yeah,
them in
because
tubes
they
and
can't
just
take care of
keep them
themselves.
alive because they can't do anything else
Yeah,
because they've given everything up to the creative forces of AI.
there was a Canadian science fiction story, which I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember the name of the book or the writer because I would have read it like 35 years ago, at least. Um, but he would have written it, I think, in the 70s. But the premise is technology has been infused with efficient the ongoing law is efficiency. Help humanity by being efficient. So humans are forced to live in in the park because technology is so for instance, stores are all self-run. And if enough stuff isn't being bought at the store, it's inefficient, so they close the store. So humans will go into stores and steal food to keep the store open so they'll have food later. You can't ride in taxis because they're moving so fast, the speed, the G forces will kill us. And so the end of the story is that um, the hero of the story, I would say the protagonist, because he's not truly heroic, is wearing a deep sea diving suit to protect him while he's in a cab and goes to where the main brain is with an atomic bomb they were able to find. And he leaves it. But there's humans there living in the park. And humans being humans, they thought he forgot it. So they send it back to him. And of course, the bomb kills
Yeah, yeah,
the humans that, yeah. And so, but this idea is that the world is too sharp and fast and aggressive for humans to live in anymore.
yeah. They forget that rough edges is where creativity is. Speaking about the
Yeah.
creative process, and as you said, oh, you go up and make a mistake. I'm sorry, let me learn from it. Versus efficiency, it's not very human to be too efficient. Maybe it's
No.
good for like a
Well,
soulless robot and all that sort
that's
of
the word I was
stuff.
exactly going to say, soulless, because
Yeah,
the stainless steel rat series and this
yeah.
idea that to be in a world that uh, is perfect and so mechanical and that to be a criminal, one has to become a stainless steel rat within that universe. Um, and I think, despite the fact that I didn't want to talk about today, the world today, but I think there's some people doing
Yeah.
destructive, heinous things
Hmm.
because to them it's power, or at least so creativity is hard. We've been discussing about failing and falling and making mistakes. So creativity and building is hard.
Hmm. Hmm.
And knowing also that whatever you make will be eventually broken or fallen or forgotten because that's the universe, right?
Or
Uh,
stolen and rebranded under someone else's name.
sure, whatever,
Yeah.
but destruction, if profound enough, might be more permanent and more fame creating. I'm not agreeing with that philosophy. I'm just wondering if that's something that's sitting within a thought process. So going back to like our bitching and complaining about
Well,
perhaps
there's chaos. Yeah. Well, I always look at it this way. You don't want things completely erased. You want to like learn, like again, why are we talking? Why are we doing all this stuff? Because we're living on the shoulders of giants. We can appreciate and attribute to it. If it was all erased or we didn't know about it, that would be changing our thoughts and under, not that I want to get all big brother, but yeah, not having access to certain writings and readings or ancient ancient ruins or certain places of the world. They just destroyed all these archaeological sites because it's not,
heartbreaking.
like all
Yeah.
those things to me is not helping creativity. Causing chaos is good. This show, by the way, I
Yeah.
called it Cosmos to Chaos because I believe from order to chaos, there's some
Mhm.
sweet spots in between where creativity occurs. This is back. You might have know Elric and all these things too. Elric Mamel Nabone. Okay, for Michael Moorcock, great writer. It's all if chaos rules, we're sludge, but if we get too
Yeah.
much order, we're crystallized into stasis.
Yeah.
You need the eternal balance of dance of being able to create.
Super interesting because with the thought of heroes,
Mm-hmm.
heroes often are defenders of order.
Right. And in these books, in which I think they're actually the defenders of balance a lot of the time, about trying to live a balance, because too much order becomes totalitarian. So it looks like they're
Totally. Oh no,
fighting order,
100%.
but they might not being totally order. They're trying to do the moral, ethical, human
Hmm.
goodness thing, which I think is like a balancing act.
But characters,
Mm-hmm.
thinking of truly chaotic characters are interesting, but few and far between.
Yeah.
I think, like, sorry, uh, positive chaotic characters are few and far between because there's that trope that often floats around about villains that turned out to be right. You know what I mean? It's like maybe
Mm-hmm.
they were right the whole time kind of thing. Um, I think the thing I'm struggling to 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 vocalize is change for the sake of change doesn't have value.
Mm-hmm.
You know, empty change. Let's call it empty change. Or more importantly, destruction because one can't create has no value.
I agree. I want to shift it a little bit back to you
Please.
then, because we're only because you're saying you're going through stressful times with the whole, well, with the world, but also your own world is in a bit of chaos with all the uh things you're doing to build up the studio, but you're still going. And I'm wondering again, this gets back to talking about, I also ask how your art affects mental wellness, being, but if
Please,
it's
yeah.
also the driving force that keeps you going, like, and remembering, even though you have to pay all these bills, you don't have automation
Yeah.
yet. It's like, yeah, but I am going to do that cool fight scene. Like, I don't know, like what keeps you going? How do you fight off all these stresses of the little man on your shoulder you were talking about?
So one of the things that actually is proven to be quite healthy or helpful is mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be this might sound incredibly arrogant, I'm sorry for those who are subtly offended, you know. But I Kirsten and I were unable to have children. So the concept of legacy and what comes after has been something on my mind. And then realizing I can share knowledge and philosophy with upcoming artists, not forcing them to become mini me's, not absolutely attempting to clone new Daniels. But there's something really awesome about it because I didn't really have a mentor. I had people who were important to me, who both actually good and bad, right? Who uh, have led me to be who I am now. So I went through York University for theater, and I think my Kirsten would agree. A lot of what I do is simply in opposition to how I felt treated or educated. I'm not doing that to other people, kind of feeling, right? And so um, I would rather not have to leave a world behind where that experience was the common one.
Mhm.
And so I'm doing what I can to perhaps create an environment that allows people to be welcomed, creative, challenged. You know, uh, I'm trying hard not to use the word safe for the simple reason the problem with safety is it might mean the wrong thing. So, so safety should be a place where you can be welcome and work, but not where you're spoon fed into becoming something you're not.
Well, that's not safety. As I said with that other thing, you'll end up in a tube
100%.
eventually being looked after other
Yeah.
people just putting nutrients into your body and you just sit there.
Yeah. And,
But
and
could
well,
I just jump in? Why did you think it would be arrogant or sorry? What was, I forget the term, or you thought you'd offend people by
the
saying
issue
being
is
a
this, that
mentor? Like, is mentor a
who the
bad
fuck are
word?
you? Yeah. Like, who the fuck are you to think anything you think or know is of value? That's
But
that stupid little guy, right?
here's the flip side too, right?
Mm.
Is this we call it social constructivism? I'm an educator, right? Everyone has pockets of knowledge. You might have a lot, but the student also has some. Because even though you're giving stuff to them, they will give to you. And they'll also keep you current
100%.
with the 21st century. But it's about
100%.
if they look at you, hey, Boomer, they got an issue. Like, well, why are you judging me? And is that something come from you? Because again, it is interesting. Like, is being a mentor a bad word in the 21st century? Like, who are you? Well, I'm a person and I have some experience. That's all I'm saying. If you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. I'm not saying yeah, but it was
I,
interesting that you mentioned
I,
that.
well, an interesting, okay. So Kirsten and I was so used to for years being the kid, the young buck in the industry. And seamlessly and unexpectedly am now this old sage, But Kirsten and I just relatively the last 5 years or 6 years have been on the receiving end of ageism, which is fascinating,
Hmm.
and being lectured and told that you're something that you're not is off-putting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I'm just looking forward to getting some discounts at least with this. But beyond that, it is interesting about encountering stuff once you're in certain zones and going, hey, wait a
And
second. Yeah.
assumptions from another person uh, telling you um, this is this is what the world is, and you're like, "Ah, perhaps we should have this conversation at a later time after you've had more experience.
Well, the
And have
Oscar Wilde line, I'm not young
please,
enough to know everything. And thanks to the internet and all everything else we're talking about, and there's so much content that people just look at it, immediately take it. It's again that thing about I just want immediate answers without stopping to reflect and do the process. process, product. I'll bring it back almost because we're almost done a full hour anyways. But I think we should meet again and maybe we
Oh,
can
I'd
do a
love
whole
that.
science fiction show. But I'm just saying, but what you're talking about is these people who think they know so much because they think the internet is all true and immediate answers versus you haven't stopped to think, is it true? And to put it in context, to do the reflective process, to actually talk to people, fight your assumptions. Like, yeah. So ageism and other
I,
things in the world that we won't get into, but I mean, I was like, whoa, man. Yeah.
but and to share that thought, I also love the Mark Twain. I'm going to misquote, but Mark Twain talking about he leaves home and travels and comes back and he's amazed at how much his father has grown. You know,
That
and
is a good one.
so
Yes.
yeah, like I don't know. I'm certainly not ready to give up or stop. Uh,
Yeah, because what keeps you going without all, even with all this stuff? I was like,
yeah,
there must be like,
I
this is for people of our age. Because even though there's the young artists out there, people in our age, I'm still going and I love doing what you do. And it sounds like you love what you do. But
oh,
why? What is
absolutely.
that love? It seems like that keeping you going, right? The love.
There's and of course I wish I could remember. So I suffer from sort of an aphasia where proper nouns I just can't seem to hold them sometimes. Right? It's a name of an artist I'm thinking of, and I want to say he's a violinist, and he's like 96. You know what I mean? And they asked him, "Why do you still play violin?" And his comment was, "Because I think I'm starting to get good at it." And so, what keeps me going? Um, the mentoring was part of it, but I still leave the room after working with a sense of I've accomplished something that's both unique, valuable, and mine
Mhm.
that has been shared with the other people in the room. Uh, COVID was terrible because this was the only way we were doing anything. And I
Mhm.
tried my hand. I did a bit of this too, a little bit of podcasting too, and it was okay, you know. And I posted some ideas of how to do things, techniques, and but it's so clear to me that what I do is a shared in-person experience versus like a lecture series that you might be more comfortable being able to do by Zoom
Mhm.
or monologues. Some people taught monologues through this, and it was just no, it just wasn't what I did. And so I feel, like I said before about COVID, I feel like I'm recovering from a profound illness that started at COVID, has come to now the end of Arenas. And right now, what's keeping me going is the excitement and expectation that I'll be on the other side of this, and that I will all this all this pain and experience will become new creative uh,
Well, yeah. Well,
um,
there's our experiences, and that's where we
to
get all our
spawn.
inspirations from.
Yeah, yeah, and this is going to sound awful, but I have been working with people, and I'm looking at them and seeing their huge need, and knowing I can serve that is not a
Mhm.
small thing either. Because can you imagine feeling completely superfluous?
You- In other words, your art also gives you meaning, and you see a
Yeah,
meaning and a role that connects you to. Yeah, yeah. Back
like
to
I
Star Trek. No Captain Dunsel. I don't know why it just popped into my mind with the Ultimate Computer M5 and Captain Kirk feeling superfluous. But
yeah.
sorry, the
No,
callbacks
no,
is
and you're
part of
right,
the art.
and that just that thing like I'm not the only person. So I'm a fight master, and there are other fight masters at Fight Directors Canada, the association I'm part of, and there's fight masters in the UK and in the United States. Uh, um, and so it's not like there are other people who don't do what I do, but there's no one who does what I do, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, you're
And
Dan.
and
It's just
and it's
like
important.
there's writers. There's many writers. There's many visual artists. There's many dancers. Maybe there's many fight instructors. But you are you, and what you're describing too. Even what you're describing here, I don't know how many fight instructors actually have that huge background you just described about. You're pulling from multiple forms of art. Maybe they do too. I don't know. But it sounds like you have your own unique way of doing it, and
Hope so.
especially how it's
Uh,
all integrated, as I said, into, as you said, safety, story, style. We didn't get to style. I'll have to have you
oh,
back for
okay.
another episode because I mean
Well,
it's
no, but
already
just
been an
super quick.
hour, but
But
I
just
will have you
just
back if you will.
yeah. But just so we, because I think this is worth saying. Safety obviously makes sense. If I get hurt or I hurt my
Mhm.
partner, we can't function. And if I cause fear in the audience, we can't do it. Story is I can do something absolutely safe, but if you as an audience don't believe the event within the creation of the story style of the story that we're creating, or you don't understand it, or my like if I create the illusion of a slap, but I'm like 10 feet away and I do this and the other person moves their head, it might be funny once, but that's
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
so the story has to be understandable and believable. So safety, story. Style is the most mobile, most elastic, the most plastic, because style is the the style is the universe you're creating. So if I'm doing a clown stylized reality, or cartoon, for instance, like you can drop an anvil on someone's head and they get flat and then they go blow themselves up. But it's all like you don't sit there watching Bugs Bunny going, well, that's not believable because it's their reality, versus what often we're doing, which is a hyper realistic kitchen sink style drama, and yet still is stylized in a live performance because we're all arbitrarily looking in a direction that's in a frame of some sort.
So it's almost like,
If
yeah,
that
I
makes
see what
sense.
you mean. It's like if I was watching Quentin Tarantino Kill Bill series, it's so over the top, but it is like Bugs Bunny. But we know that, so we buy it and go along with it. It's only when it becomes discordant styles and it goes off,
Mhm.
then it breaks.
And you've
Yeah,
seen it, by the way. You've watched something. Kirsten calls it not singing in the same choir, where an actor doesn't belong in the rest of the movie, or like they just didn't get it right. And
yeah.
and it could be a minor thing, like the movie's very realistic and everything's going great, and then they do a really bad punch.
Mhm.
Like it's just this is trash. And you have a moment when you feel that you're pulled out. That's what we're talking about.
Right. We'll have, as I said, I'll have you back because again, that's also a community. It's like, where's the director or the editor? It's like, wait, no, just because they did it and they're not into it, it's like, well, why are we leaving it in anyways? I don't get it. There's more of the whole creative process. But before we wrap up though, is there anything you wanted to, I know we were all over the place. That's good. As
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah. No,
Cosmos, the
it's good. It was
chaos,
very good.
like
Yeah.
that's where all the creative stuff rolls out.
I, I'm going to share one last thing
Okay.
that that I think uh, is worth discussing. And then if you want, I'd love to come back. Are you kidding? This has been
Well,
such a
definitely you
treasure.
will.
So I was asked before COVID what the future of Rapier Wit was going to be. And I thought, one, it would continue in very well the same way, like teaching people whose plans are to be professional performers. Absolutely. But what was happening is I was getting doctors and lawyers and people coming out to be able to play. So you're learning weapon forms as a character because we perform them in a story, and um, and and it was a place where you would go. I'm not going to a dojo where um, you have to invest a different sense of self and time. So I'm not saying it's like obviously becoming a martial artist is a very specific and important thing, but it was a place to go and literally embrace play
Mhm.
where you could do it safely. So we're using swords or firearms, whatever it is, knowing that you could do these things relatively quickly as compared to spending 14 years to get a belt in martial arts, right? Or things that no one does, right? Like we use all sorts of weapons, both historical, contemporary, and science fiction or fantasy, right? And Monday drop-ins are periods where different teachers teach different things. So they're all standalone classes. So you could do almost anything depending what's going on. Other people are doing certification where they spend 90 hours to train towards something. But this idea that people who aren't invested in career can come participate and enjoy themselves. And ironically, you were talking about, uh, I'm going to misquote you, but everyone's an artist.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just how much of you are you willing to put out there. So everyone can do what we do. The unpleasant question is, does anyone watch you do it? Like on the professional payment side. But
So, did
otherwise,
anyone
the
ever come and do a
participation side
team
is fun.
building exercise and come out and let's have some fun?
Oh no, totally. I, I was
Yeah.
doing I was doing corporate stuff. COVID killed it because no one was going to be in the same room. But
Mm.
I go to schools all the time where it's like there's no way in an hour and a half you're going to master something. So what I'm there to do, in my opinion, is teach the why of things using techniques, right? So they're interested in learning a little bit more about theater stuff, but it's about participation, partnering, and shared awareness of performance.
And I think I'm going to call this episode The Illusion of Violence, because that's what it is. It's very magical. Well, I'll think about it. But if you like that title, that's what this will be.
I do like that title.
Okay. Well, you quoted it, so I'll put it in. So that definitely I'll have you back because there's so much more we didn't get to because we're having too much fun. And that's good because
It is
creativity
good.
is fun. So thank you, Dan, for doing this. I greatly appreciate it.